Welcome to the closing of Artists Think About Water show. It's on the solstice today. The year is 2021, and some things close, like the show, and other things open up, like the length of day. As a way of closing the show, we're going to toast with our own drinking waters and discuss where those waters are from and how they got into our glasses. And thank you all. It'll be very interesting to hear what people are drinking, and enjoy the next few moments of the artists thinking about water, talking about their water sources and their work. Okay, good. Okay, so Naui, do you want to start with your?
I have my water. You can see it. So I'm joining you from Waltham, Massachusetts, which is situated on the ancestral lands of Massachusetts and Pawtucket tribe. And this water is coming from the Quebbin Reservoir that's about 65 miles west of Boston. And I learned that the word Quebbin is a Nipmuc tribe word, which means place of many waters or meeting of many waters. So I like that. So here's that toast to you. And I just wanted to share this information. So I am a river. My name Naue has a character for river in it. And the character for now is a part of the word honest, and the character for E is a wide river. And my father said about this name, he said, we imagine somebody is gonna be like a wide estuary welcoming everybody. So I am a river, and I feel very personal about rivers. And they are an extension of myself. So I always think this in my work. Relating to water is important to me, and I want people to relate to water as an extension of themselves. So whatever the medium I choose to work with, I always think of this relationship. And our mental models are sometimes the biggest barrier to making changes. So I always think about breaking or trying to subvert the mental models. So in the drawing that I'm showing for this exhibit, which is in the back, just a portion of it, you can see the waters are also connected with organs as veins for earth, but also connected with organs and digestive system in a way. And water is blue but contaminated, and human can turn a blind eye to the wrongdoings done to the environment. The eyes are not seeing the truth. Both brain and mind need to be open and exposed to nature because we are part of nature. So here's to everybody, and here's to water, which is kind of strange. My water disappears, so toast.
Oh,
I know, visually it disappears. It's here.
Lovely. All right, Giana. Are you? Yeah, there you are. Unmute. Good, good.
Yes. Well, I keep recycling this water bottle, and it's so hot down here that I just put it in the freezer, let it melt, and drink it. And the watershed comes from the Chagres River, which is the sequence of rivers that actually feed the canal. So yes, I'm getting water that it's also powering our economy and our livelihood in the world. And I wanted to say that el agua lo es todo y sin ella no somos nada. And that means that water is everything. It's all for us. And without it, we are nothing, we're none. And I feel it speaks for my body, and it also speaks for my identity as a Panamanian.
Thank you. All right, Fritz, you're on.
Hi. Well, in the water or the picture behind me is a depiction of the turbidity of various waters in the Arctic. I am not in the Arctic right now. I'm in Bethany, Connecticut, in the Naugatuck River watershed. And the water that I have with me is directly from a well, which goes directly down 440 feet below the house I'm sitting in. And so because I'm so interested in the turbidity of water, you probably can't see here, but our water is not exactly clear. And 5 years ago, we in fact had to have our well fracked again. And this was the first time that I learned that this term fracking has applications other than the evil fracking of natural gas, that we can actually sort of do this same thing to wells for water. And when we did that, basically put all this pressure into the well, and it pushed the sediment back into the rock so the aquifer could come back into the water, and our water took on a new color even here in the house in that time period. So here is my Naugatuck watershed water with its slight tint of iron and manganese. I toast you all.
Gotcha. Fascinating.
Cheers.
I'll go next because that's our picture order, which is what we're using. So I toast the closing of the show and the disappearing of my water. I'm glad that I'm not drinking the water behind me because it's not potable, just drinking my well water. It's from the Susquehanna watershed, starting with Muddy Creek and soaking into about 20 feet of shale, and then another 20 feet of limestone, which, if you think about it, are the skeletons and shells of a prehistoric ocean. So it's an interesting idea that my water is being filtered through an oceanic layer. And then it's being pumped up by my well, a very old well, over 150 years old, very well sited, not particularly deep. It's about 45 feet deep, and goes up through my pump into my PVC pipes, because the house was piped right before we bought it 30 years ago, and through my taps and into my glass, actually a glass that I made and sandblasted with leaves of the red maple. So this combination of trees and water living large in my glass. And I did want to just speak about sort of thoughts about water. And to say that sometimes I stand in urban stream water that has signs posted around it saying, "Do not touch." And sometimes I wrestle with urban river tides and things like dead bloated fish and rats are floating down it. I collect water often that looks a lot like sewage and smells like it too. And I often witness creeks that are dammed with garbage and with construction debris. And it's heartbreaking, but it's important to acknowledge that this too is part of the precious element of our life, that these waters are also precious and could be a life-giving force. And some things are eking a little bit of life out of them. I always find that humans are misinterpreting what they see and what they hear. They're often overlooking these watery elements and how important they are, because that doesn't look like water to people when it smells like sewage or it's running through a lot of algae. But I do hope that if we concentrate, we can shift our minds a little bit and be more accepting. And as Elise Spiegel says, maybe the tempo of our own demise will slow down if we can change our minds about how things are. And so I'm very into embracing dirty water and getting others at least to look at it and understand its flow. And that's my job. And I'm hoping that a few people will find these waters and see the importance of them. So here's to waters in all forms, filthy and potable. Okay, next is Linda. You are next.
I thought this was an amazing idea for water specialists to examine their own water. Can you imagine? This was a great trip for me. My Lakewood, New Jersey water comes from 14 wells. The Englishtown Aquifer, the Kirkwood Aquifer, the Mount Laurel Aquifer, the Potomac Aquifer, the Upper Potomac, and the Vincetown Aquifer, among other aquifers. It would take too long. But do we all know that an aquifer is an underground layer of water bearing permeable rock where the water is extracted and brought into the well that we drink? Now, I want to say that my Lakewood water has passed the Drinking Water Act quality standard for many years. That's important. And what's important is in my refrigerator, thanks to my husband that you just met, we have the zero water drinking water pitcher, which removes some things. But overall, it was fascinating because the house I'm living in, this water has been drinking from for 50 years because my mother had it first. My husband, we had Brita, now we have zero water. It's all very interesting. But the point is that we also buy mineral waters. My husband's from Germany, so we buy a lot of different European waters that are, quote, mineral waters. And we were asked to say like how we became in love with water. And I became in love with water because I was sent by Lenora Carrington in Mexico to a mineral spring where I soaked and drank water and got over a breakup. So this became a life journey for me. And the picture behind me is one of my journeys. I was invited to Bad Gastein, Austria. Here, you're looking at a waterfall that emits radon in the droplets that come out. These droplets can be inhaled, they can land on your skin. You can even drink different water fountains from the town. In 1327, it was deemed a mineral water healing spring. And to this day, it's one of the popular springs in Europe. And this particular radon that's in the mineral water that I do not have here in New Jersey has properties that can regenerate and strengthen the body's immune system. And this has been one of my callings in life. So I'm happy to join the group and very fascinated by my own daily life experience. Thank you, collective. That's what we're about, to not only learn about each other, to express to each other. That's it.
Great, thank you. Fredericka, will you toast and tell us things?
Hi, I work with water in two ways. First, I spend time with the body of water, and I try to experience it with every one of my senses to understand it. So how cold is it? How hot is it? What does it sound like? What am I hearing when I'm there? What am I smelling? How does it feel in my hand or on my body? Sometimes I taste it. I hardly ever, when I'm within a body of water outside, feeling like I can swallow what I'm tasting. I just don't think it's safe. So then after I've really taken in a meditative, sensual way, the body of water that I'm experiencing, I get my camera out and I take hundreds of photographs of that water. And then I gather together a subset of them in order to create something that will move, to bring, I capture the water, now I need to bring it back to life so that it becomes wild again. And then when the conversation that I'm having with water pauses and I can't think of anything else to say with my brush, I stop. So today, the water I'm drinking is from the Catskill and Delaware watersheds, starting in the Catskill Mountains. And from those aqueducts and reservoirs, it goes into the Kensico Reservoir, which also receives water from the Delaware River aqueducts. This happens in Westchester County, where the temperature, pH, nutrient, and microbial levels are measured by robots. And then they add fluoride there, and then they put in some chlorine. From there, it goes into the world's largest UV disinfection place and then it drinks a cocktail of chlorine, phosphoric acid, sodium hydroxide, to disinfect it and raise the pH levels enough to prevent the pipes from leaching out terrible chemicals like lead. And moving on, it stops in the 900 million gallon Hillview Reservoir in Yonkers, where 3 main tunnels whoosh it downhill and into the water tanks of New York City. In Soho, that tank is at the top of our building. So I raise my Think About Water bottle in a toast to water. May it nurture one and all. Thank you, Stacy, for this wonderful idea.
Okay. I'm glad it's working. It's a nice little party to have. Doug, you're up next.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, everyone. Really great just to be able to see you guys. I haven't seen you guys in a minute. I am in Chicago, and behind me is a picture, I believe, of Lake Michigan, which is the watershed that we're in. It is a glacier from the Ice Age that carved the land with its mighty force and then melted. And the water is swirling around in that lake from the top to the bottom, experiencing inputs of all different kinds. Some of the negative ones are iron tailings in the north and BP plant in Michigan, Indiana border, steel plants, nuclear power plants. And we happen to be on a circle or a cycle of rotation. I believe that Milwaukee and Racine and other towns in Wisconsin, their water comes down to Chicago. That water can be filled with all kinds of crap. And then it is taken from these, what we call the cribs. They are old houses that are built out on the lake. And if you were at Lake Michigan in the city, you would see some weird buildings every once in a while along the, punctuating the horizon, large brick buildings which have inflow pipes that suck the water into our main water treatment facility, which is right near the famous Navy Pier tourist attraction. And it is called Olive Park, and I forget the name of the facility there. Also conveniently located at the one branch of the Chicago River that connects to the lake on this area, and that is a river that has been re-engineered to flow backwards from the Mississippi to the lake, I believe, or from the lake now to the Mississippi. I always get that confused. And that was quite a feat of engineering to do that, to, at the time, stop more pollution into the lake. But quite a weird thing to do. Anyway, that water gets treated much like Fredericka mentioned, using things like chlorine and fluoride for our teeth. And the picture that you see behind me is also using chlorine in the form of bleaches, and that the work that I make about water and other natural elements gets bleached by chlorine-based products that eat away the analog material of films, emulsion. And so what you're seeing is that degradation of a physical substrate by chlorine, which is also in our water, in our bodies, to clean that water from all the poison and things like Giardia and E. coli and so on. I find it interesting for me to connect with the ephemeral nature of water. It's a gas, it's a solid, it's a liquid. It's us, it's the lubricant of life, across the planet, this whole cycle that we are all in and captivated by and moved by to make work and talk and share about this with others, our concerns and our love for water. But for me, the most poignant aspect of it is the ephemeral temporal part of water, that it does change states. It does enter and exit ourselves. It is ourselves. And it also, shapes our planet and provides the resource that is so vital. And so it talks about existence to me. And the film medium itself talks to me also about a stoppage of time. So there's some kind of, classic photo philosophy around that idea. And it's just ephemerality personified. And then for some extent, I like to reflect that back through the art, like the piece in the show and the piece behind me, to people to hopefully recognize something, while a little bit sad, and also a little bit of an illustration of something that could be considered a sad part, degradation of the environment. There's also, to me, a hidden kind of connection to cycles and transience. And so that's what's powerful for me in connecting with water through art. So I raise my glass of Lake Michigan water with all its, and hopefully no lead in this one. Thank you guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Roz is next, and after Roz is Aviva. But so Roz goes now.
Yeah, I'm interested in the hidden aspects of water underground, in some cases mythic, in some cases actual. The artwork that was in the exhibition, which I'm sorry, I don't have the photograph of it, but I made it years ago to install in a crypt in London where people were buried. And the sculpture called River of Fire was inspired by the 5 mythic rivers that ran through the Greek underworld of Hades, land of the dead. These rivers were called hate, lamentation, pain, forgetfulness, and fire. So there's a sense in which I'm interested too in the sort of shadow side of water, the side of these qualities that speak to the sort of shadow side, the underground side of life. These days, I'm working on a project that explores real underground water, groundwater, which is present in rocks and soil, as I think it was Linda who mentioned, the aquifers under the surface of the earth, which supplies much of the water used for agriculture and for drinking supplies. In fact, there's far more water in all the in the underground reservoirs than there are in all the reservoirs and lakes on the surface. But because it's unseen and difficult to monitor, groundwater is largely unregulated, and in many places is being polluted and depleted beyond the capacity to recharge by rainwater and snowmelt. So I'm creating artworks in colleague with an ecologist, springs ecologist in Arizona, making artworks and installations that seek to make groundwater more visible, both groundwater in springs, which is groundwater that emerges to the surface, and of course, ultimately to make it more worthy of conservation. And the water in my glass is groundwater. It was came from a well drilled in our land in rural Massachusetts a long time ago, decades ago. I live in the Connecticut River watershed, but this water came from underneath where I live. It was pumped up to my faucet from 145 feet down from a 10-year-old, according to the well driller, a 10,000-year-old ice age river. And so it comes to me unadulterated, pure, and delicious. So I toast to all of you and all of your water, and to water everywhere. Thank you.
Aviva, will you unmute and toast?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is a lovely idea. Thank you. It's been really pleasurable to listen to everybody. Thank you all. What you're looking at behind me is one quadrant, a detail from one quadrant of the restored GhostNet site, which I began restoring. I hope you can still hear me. And the site, as some of you know, was originally a town dump. And when I first came to it, it was nothing but rubble. It had been the town dump for a while. Some of it was made land from granite quarrying. And I built the soil and I planted the plants and I continued to build the soil today. Very carefully, a lot of permaculture, a lot of community analysis, plant analysis. And so now what I have is, besides the soil, I have a number of shaded areas. And that's really important because I'm now doing a lot of work on fire and drought. And one of the big issues with fire and drought is what we've done to vegetation and continue to do to vegetation and how inadequately we manage it. So as I continue to live on the site, which I'm doing this summer until the fall, I can observe where there's a drought and where we get some moisture. Right now we have fog. We've had some really bad drought. The garden is surviving because of the way everything is layered in the garden. It was very carefully analyzed and continues to be analyzed. However, partly because it's such a success biologically, the water is undrinkable. And I cannot wash my clothes in it. So at least nothing white or light colored. And I love white in the summer. So I farm my laundry out to somebody on the island who has better water. And I drink water from down the road, Poland Spring. So here's my Poland Spring toast to you all. May we all be able to drink our own water. May it be clean, may it be pure, may it be fresh, may it nourish the whole world.
Amen.
Giana, no, sorry.
Are you there? Because you are next.
I have to go. So
Oh,
thank you all. Yeah, I
no,
have to go
good to
teach.
see you. I'm glad it
Yeah,
worked
good
out.
to see you all. I have to go now teach movement class. So great to
Good.
see you. Love you all and thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Bye-bye.
So now
Bye.
you get to sweat, the other kind of water.
Yes.
Okay, Ilana, you need to unmute and start up if you can.
I think I'm going to pass this time because my internet is terrible. I'm going in and out.
You
And
might turn your video off and leave your voice on, and you could try that perhaps.
I did. I tried to
Okay.
that while I was listening.
All right.
I don't want to torture anybody with elongated vowels.
I got
So,
you. Okay.
thank you all. I really think this has been a wonderful project. I think we need to focus on water. Thank you.
Okay, good. And Jaanika, you are our last.
So I'm here on the about 50 miles north from Manhattan on the Hudson River in Cold Spring today. And so this glacier carved estuary that I'm living with and have all the years I've lived in the United States, which is now 23 years almost. So wherever I lived in New York City or up here, the river has been the constant. But the drinking water comes, and that was a good homework. I actually didn't know, comes from very close by. They have our own reservoir here, but I did not do the thorough homework to find out where is the water coming from into it. But we also have, of course, the big aqueduct passing along the Hudson River. There's the aqueduct that brings water to New York City, but we do not get that water here. So there's no tapping into that source. It all goes to New York City. And the love of water, I was just thinking about it. I think it really started early on growing up in Estonia, Northern Europe, with so much ice, and ice is still sort of part of what I'm thinking about. And now with this solo show coming up in July, very hot time, but it's all about ice memory. And I just would like to read, because nobody can really say it better, how we can now drill down to glaciers and into great depths and take part and preserve the ice before it melts, because the ice in these ice cores holds a lot of memory on how our climate has changed, and even historical events that have happened gets now stored and analyzed. So here is a very brief text, beautifully written by Robert McFarlane from the Underground book. Ice has a memory. It remembers in detail, and it remembers for 1 million years or more. Ice remembers forest fires and rising seas. Ice remembers the chemical composition of the air around the start of the last ice age, 110,000 years ago. It remembers how many days of sunshine fell upon it in a summer of 50,000 years ago. It remembers the temperature in the clouds at the moment of snowfall early in the Holocene. It remembers the explosions of Tombora in 1815, Lucky in 1783, Mount St. Helens in 1482. It remembers the smelting boom of the Romans, and it remembers the lethal quantities of lead that were present in petrol in the decades after the Second World War. It remembers and it tells us that we live on a fickle planet capable of swift shifts and rapid reversals. Ice has a memory, and the color of this memory is blue. Here is to the waters. I do have wine water though from Italy, but thank you everyone for putting this together, and this has been really truly well curated in all possible ways.
Yes.
Right, lovely. So we have toasted our waters, our sources, and our thoughts.